All right, so now we're going to take you to England, where there's a bit of a political crisis unfolding because there may have been a breach of the UK stay-at-home order by none other than the Prime Minister Boris Johnson's top advisor. There's growing calls for Dominic Cummings to resign after the UK Prime Minister's chief aide drove 250 miles to his parents' home in northeast England back in March, just days after Britain went into lockdown. Cummings and his wife were reportedly showing coronavirus symptoms at the time, and he says that they made the trip so extended family could take care of their 4-year-old son if their condition worsened. Here's more on how he defended his decision.
I don't regret what I did. As I said, I think reasonable people may well disagree about how I thought about what to do in these circumstances, but I think that what I did was actually reasonable in these circumstances. In terms of the rules, I think that the rules make clear that if you're dealing with small children, then that can be exceptional circumstances. And I think that the situation that I was in was exceptional circumstances. And I think that the way that I dealt with it was the least risk to everybody concerned if my wife and I had both been unable to look after our 4-year-old.
All right, so Elizabeth Palmer is joining us now to talk a little bit more about the situation. You know, Elizabeth, I think what he's describing, many parents have found themselves grappling with, not necessarily sort of being sick and wondering what to do with their child, but childcare in general, when there are no schools, there's no daycare, and you have to keep working, and perhaps you find yourself becoming ill as well. So before we get into all of that, though, just tell us who Dominic Cummings is and why, the fact that he did this is upsetting so many people.
Dominic Cummings is one of Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister's most trusted advisors. He's sometimes referred to in the press here as the Svengali, the Rasputin, the Machiavelli. He is a guy who's regarded as having helped the Prime Minister not only win the Brexit campaign, but win the election in December. So a key guy. His wife said she was, well, let's begin with March 23rd, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson announced the lockdown here, and he said to the whole country, you must stay home. 4 days later, Dominic Cummings, we now learn, left his home because his wife had been feeling ill, and he thought if he got his family 200 miles north of here to his father's farm, and they both fell ill, family in the area could come and look after their little boy. That's raised some eyebrows. I mean, we're being asked to believe that Dominic Cummings, in this international city of London with 11 million people, where he also has family, well connected as he is, wouldn't have been able to find child care locally. I think that a lot of people here feel as if that's stretching the limits of credibility.
So, Liz, what's been the reaction from lawmakers to all of this controversy? We know at least one of Boris Johnson's junior ministers has resigned.
Yes, he has, the Minister for Scotland. 30 more members of Boris Johnson's own party have now spoken openly, saying Dominic Cummings just can't stay. You heard in the clip there him saying that there was some wiggle room when it came to kids. People weren't commanded to stay home. If there was absolutely no alternative, then they should use their own judgment. But not only government ministers, but clerics and many thousands of people in Britain have been saying openly, look, we were also in what could be called a crisis. We didn't go out of the house, even though we had childcare problems, we had parents who were ill, we had pressing family occasions to attend. People just said no to themselves. They decided to stay home. And for some reason, Dominic Cummings decided that he was above, if not the letter of the law, at least the spirit of the law. There has been a wave of fury about this, and maybe compounded by the fact that Boris Johnson is backing Dominic Cummings. And Dominic Cummings, when he was forced to go out and explain himself, as you saw him there in the garden of number 10 Downing Street, never said he was sorry.
So, Boris Johnson's government has certainly taken a lot of criticism over the way the UK has handled the pandemic. First, he was sort of treating it like it wasn't really a major issue. And then, of course, he got sick and things changed. And then he kind of made this speech that, to me, that sort of made kind of sort of grunts and groans towards reopening, but I don't think it actually indicated that the UK would be reopening in any concrete manner. So I guess I have sort of multiple part question. What is the status there in the UK? Is the UK reopening and emerging from this pandemic? And what is the general feeling about how the government has handled this?
I don't think the government has covered itself in glory, and many people agree, from columnists to the opposition, the political opposition. That last speech from Boris Johnson that you mentioned is widely regarded to have been confusing because the motto, which had been a very clear stay at home, became a rather ambiguous stay alert. So nobody was quite sure what that meant. Pubs and restaurants are still closed. So are major retail stores. Grocery stores are open here. And people all along have been able to get out and get exercise now as much as they like. So you see people walking in the parks, sunbathing. The beaches have been crowded because the weather's been beautiful. The government is now, in spite of the ambiguous messaging, starting to stake out specific moves in ending the lockdown. So on the 1st of June, car dealerships will reopen, and also some primary schools will reopen in some parts of the country, although the teachers' union is not entirely happy with the conditions yet. We've just heard that on the 15th of June, retail stores are going to be open again. And I know that the pub that I pass on the way home from the office has reopened to the extent you can't go inside. You can go to the door and get a beer and then take it down on the riverbank. So there are the hard milestones, if you like, of reopening. And then there's a little bit of, blurry around the edges as people look at the statistics and see that the rate of infection is going down. It's very low in London itself. And the government is just not being as declarative as it needs to be if it wants people to do things a certain way.
All right, Liz Palmer for us in London. Liz, thank you as always for your reporting. We appreciate it.
Pleasure.